So today I'll be taking on an art challenge, and the idea behind it is I'll try to recreate this image, this reference image, 3 different times, and each time I will have a different time limit. For the first attempt, I will only have 30 minutes at my disposal to try and come up with something. I highly doubt the amount of stuff I will be able to make in just 30 minutes, but hey, this is a challenge and that's why we're here, right? To see what the fuck is gonna happen when you do something crazy like this. On the second attempt, I will double my time and I will have a full hour at my disposal to try and do the same thing. I'm really curious if the final image is gonna be 2 times better than the first attempt, given that I just doubled my time. On the third and final attempt, I will have a full day. I will have 24 hours to try and make the best render I can. And this is where I think the good thing is gonna happen, right? 30 minutes, an hour, 1 hour, that really is a challenge. But doing a render in 24 hours, that's something I've done plenty of times before, and I'm really comfortable and confident in my skills of creating a great render in those 24 hours. Alright. So first attempt, I'll set the timer for 30 minutes and the second I press start, the challenge takes on. Let's go. So the way I'll tackle this scene is by firstly creating a modular street piece, meaning that I will model a certain section of the road, tram line and sidewalk, and then simply instance those as many times as I need in order to create my full-length road. I want my street to be the size of a 3-lane street. As far as I know, one lane is about 4 meters wide, so I'll take this plane and make it 12 meters wide to account for the 3 lanes I want. I want to make this module square because that allows for easier control over the texture tiling and the math, also easier when you're working with a 1:1 ratio. As you can see, I'm using a mirror modifier to take care of the other side of the street, so I only have to focus on one side. I'm adding another plane that's also going to be 12 meters in length and placing it in the middle. This is where my tram line will be. I'm using a few cuts to create the space for the rails, and using a couple of extrusions, I get some simple rails in there. It's now time for the third and final plane, which will act as my sidewalk. I extrude a little bit so it's a bit higher up the ground compared to the street, and just make a simple curve by extruding this geometry. I can now use an array modifier for all those elements and make my street as long as I want it and need it to be. I'm placing my camera loosely in the scene, trying to imitate the composition I see in my reference image. Once the street and camera are locked in place, I'll grab some of these buildings and place them around the street, trying to make this look like an actual city. I'm already halfway into the challenge and I've got nothing for the giant eye in the sky. I know I won't have any time to work on that, so I'll just make a simple sphere and place it above my city. Alright, it looks like shit, but that's how life is sometimes, alright? I still have 15 minutes left for this attempt, and I think it's time to set the lighting, so it'll be easier for us to work on this scene afterwards. I'm using a simple lamp from Blender to get some lighting going on in this scene. I'm constantly trying on different directions and intensities, and well, they all look like shit in my opinion. I decided to also add a volumetric cube and get some of that dense fog in there. It will hide a lot of the scene, and with a bit of luck maybe make it look like something that won't cause people to throw up. I'm still completely unimpressed with the lighting, but I only have 6 minutes to go on this attempt, and I need to quickly bring in some textures for the road unless I want to leave that pure white with no material on it. I'm bringing in some asphalt texture from Quixel and I quickly slap those onto my modules. I'm still bothered by the lighting, and even though I only have 3 minutes left on this attempt, I decided to change it completely and just use an HDR image for the lighting. It turned out to be a good choice because now the lighting, although still boring, at least doesn't make me want to bleed to death. In the reference image I'm using, the giant eye in the sky has some nice tentacles, or whatever the fuck those are, coming out of the bottom. And with the last minute I had on this attempt, this stupid cylinder is all I could make out of it. Please just kill me already. I don't want to look at this for another second. And there you have it, guys. This is the 30-minute challenge completed. It's literal garbage, so I won't spend another minute looking at this shit, and use this as the perfect transition into the second attempt. Alright, so the second attempt. Maybe this time I won't disappoint my family who thinks I'm spending my time creating cool things, while instead I present shit like this to the entire world. I'm setting up a timer for exactly 1 hour, and let's go. I'm tackling this second attempt exactly the same way, by firstly starting to create a modular piece for the street, tram line and the sidewalk. Only this time I get to spend a little bit more time and love on it. I'm going with the same dimensions, so this part is pretty much the same. This time I'm bringing an actual tram asset from Blender Kit and use it to dictate the space I need between the rails, because I obviously want those to be correct and match up with the wheels. 10 minutes into the attempt and I jump straight into texturing. I know that the best way to make something look better and more realistic, especially with a short amount of time, is by texturing that thing much better. So I'll use quite some time for that. Here you can see me waste a lot of time being stupid and trying to move the UV in a way that will create 3 completely equal lanes that are perfectly 4 meters wide. Yep, I'm not a proud man. At one point I just say fuck it and eyeball it. I'm wasting too much time for this shit, and the much funnier thing is that later I will change this texture completely and there will be no lanes at all. So what the fuck are you doing? Meaning I successfully wasted time for literally nothing in return. If I'm not a great businessman, I don't know who is, honestly. The sidewalk is really easy, I just get to slap a texture on it. The sidewalk is not that visible, so I don't really care about it, I just make sure to get the tiling right. For those curves right here, I will simply use curb modules I found on Quixel. That's also why I didn't put much effort in modeling an actual nice curb, because I knew from the start that I will hide those with these modules later on. While looking for an appropriate texture for the tram area, I found this really nice snowy asphalt. I loved this texture as soon as I saw it, so I decided to move the UVs around to make the texture placement make sense. The thing is, right now it doesn't really make sense to have a snowy road on one side but a perfectly clear road on the other side, right? So I give up on the first streak texture and reuse the snowy one. With a few UVs tweaks here and there to get the placement right, I have a nice street that's familiar to the tram area. And now everything's a lot more cohesive and blends nicely together. Time to add the mirror modifier to each one of those meshes, and now my street module is complete. It's taken me about half the time I have on this attempt, but it looks good and now I can instance the modules and get my entire street going on. And now it's time to add a building, just like before. I kept the same HDRI image for the lighting, so I can add the volumetric straight into the scene. This is already looking much better. Now it's time for the beloved giant in the sky, so a simple sphere will be the answer once again. Alright, so after placing the giant and mysterious ball in the sky, I decided on making this street look more dynamic, and for that I need a few vehicles to scatter around. For this I'm using Blender Kit, which is a free Blender add-on giving you access to thousands of assets directly inside of Blender. I simply search for cars and drag in the ones I like. Now, one thing that's popping right into my eyes, and not in a good way, is the fact that all those vehicles are using way too saturated and bright colors, and they don't match the rest of the environment at all. To fix that, I simply select each car and modify its colors, decreasing their saturation and brightness values until they blend in much better. I now have just slightly above 10 minutes left on this attempt, so it's time for some final touches. First of all, I want to add a little bit of separation between the tram area and the main street, and for that I decided on using some railing to separate the two. And the last thing I do before finishing off is to add some power lines in between the buildings. I just know it will add a lot of visual interest and break up the uniform look in the upper part of the image. The easiest way to add those power lines, in my opinion, is to use catenary knots. You can select two meshes, and by adding a catenary knot, it will connect the 2 points you selected and will give you parameters to control, such as the amount of sagginess in each curve. I make sure to give these curves some thickness, give them a black material, and that's it, I've got power lines. And this is it. This is how the second attempt looks after 1 hour. I can definitely say it looks at least 2 times better than the first attempt, that's for sure. And even though it doesn't look like anything I would share myself, at least it conveys the idea and look we are going for. And now, for the big finale, the 24-hour attempt. I obviously don't need a timer for this one, I'll just remember the time I started working on it and know I have until tomorrow at the same time to finish my render. This one starts the same way, making the main module. I honestly think you're bored of seeing me make the street module for the third time, at least I know I am. For this one you can see I'm pretty much following the same concept, but just better. I'm including the railing to the module from the start, the curbs as well, and I get all those meshes into Substance Painter so I can actually paint nice texture on them. I brought the textures back into Blender and it's now time for the buildings. Only now I can afford to, actually place them and make them look nice. This is the first attempt where I actually have time to make the giant eye. Finally, the days of sphere horror are over. Time for the actual eye. For this one, I'm using the same eye I used in one of my previous projects. I'll only add the tentacles to it. Alright, giant eye is done, ready. I bring it back into the main scene, parent it to an empty object and place it where it needs to be. And the volumetric cube follows next, just as always. I spent some time browsing different HDRIs in order to see if something else captures my eyes, and one HDRI actually does seem to look the best in this particular case, so I stick with it. It's now time to fill this scene up with details and bring it to life. I'll just shut up from now on and let you guys enjoy the process. And there you have it, guys. This is the final image I got after the 24-hour time limit. I can safely say that I'm perfectly satisfied with this result, and I'm actually proud of how it came out, considering that out of those 24 hours I also used about like 8 or 9 for sleep and a couple more hours for my personal life, meaning that I most likely actually worked on this piece for around 10 to 12 hours, realistically speaking. Let me know if you're interested in making a dedicated video about the lighting in this final scene, as I've seen a lot of you guys are interested in this topic. But until then, don't forget, stay creative.